useful to walk you through how you use your book. This is the same book that you'll use this year and next year if you take World 2. And it's online. Honestly, they did some things right when they put this together, and there are some neat resources to help you learn the material. Even if you have trouble, say, reading it once and remembering it, there's a lot of other supports and things you can use. So I'm going to show you how to get at some of the really good stuff, some of the most useful things that you'll want to do with the book this year. You start with your login screen. You will have your own username. And I think most teachers are using kind of a generic password. I'm going to log in and show you what this will look like. All right, so when you log in, you'll see a screen that looks like this for your history book. Over here on the right, go to the online textbook. We'll get you started. Okay, now, if you look at these tabs across the top, there's a lot of really good stuff in here. Okay, the first one on the left is book pages. For example, in class, when we were talking about the city of Ur and looking at that as one of the city-states of Sumer, the earliest known civilization, we started on page 22. So if you want to jump right to that section, you can type the page number in this box and hit go. And oh look, there's page 22. Looks exactly the way it does in the printed books that we were using in class. And if you want to flip to the next page, you can just click next up at the top. One of the advantages of this is that any of the images, the charts, the graphics that are on the pages are a lot brighter. Okay, the colors really pop. Whereas the paper copies, they get beat up after a while. It's just not as easy to notice some of these things that are good when you're trying to study. So that's the first tab, is book pages. I'm going to skip over to the one up here that says audio. And for those of you who are auditory learners, you learn things primarily by listening to them. This is really good because this actually lets you listen to any section in the book. And they use the same intro for the music. I guess they're trying to set a historical mood or something. But if you wanted to listen to it, if you need the MP3s, okay, you can stop. But if you wanted to listen to it, you can pull up any section in the book, and it tells you what page number that corresponds to.
What format do those downloads come in?
Oh,
just out of curiosity. MP3, which means you can play it on your iPod or any computer that you happen to be using.
Yep. And you don't have to download it. You can play it right out of the speakers on the computer. You could do this at home, or you could do this sitting in the library, for example, during Highlander time if you just want a little refresher.
Download it, throw it on your iPod.
You can listen to it while you read it. You can have the printed or the kind of computer version of the printed page in front of you while you're listening to it, which is nice. Yep. All right, one of the other tabs up here at the top is the reference tab, and there's a lot of stuff here that, quite frankly, you don't need, but you have to keep in mind that this is an online book. It's still, in a lot of ways, set up like a book and not like a website. For example, under the reference tab, you see Atlas right here. This is exactly the same as the Atlas section in the paper copy of the textbook that you were using earlier this year when you were working on the world maps, for example. And instead of having to flip sideways, which is what you do with most of the book pages, for the stuff in the reference section, including the Atlas, you can just scroll up and down. Okay? If a map in the paper book was split over 2 pages, it's still split over 2 pages, which is a little annoying. But there are close-up maps of all the different parts of the world that are a little bit easier to use than this great big one, for example. If you don't want to scroll all the way down, if that's getting a little annoying, you move to the bottom of the page, and you can flip pages this way too, which might be a little faster if you're kind of in a hurry. So the Atlas section is pretty good. Another area that you might want to go to is right here, TOC. That's the table of contents. And again, this is exactly what you see in the front of the book. If, for example, you know that you're having a reading quiz on Section 3 of Chapter 2, and you're thinking, what in the heck is Section 3 of Chapter 2? You go to the table of contents, you go, oh, okay, that's the Indus Valley Civilization, and it starts on page 44. Okay? So that's kind of a nice way to cross-reference if you just want to see what's in a chapter. Another section, and you have to scroll down to find this guy, is actually the index of the book. So the index, would normally be in the back of a paper book. It's in the reference section because you use it to refer to things. Now, on the first page of the index, it explains what a few of the abbreviations are. If, for example, you see a letter I with a page number, okay, that's an illustration or a photograph, okay, some kind of a visual. If you see an M, that's a map, a C is a chart. So let's say, for example, you wanted to look up the Neolithic Iceman. We were talking about him briefly the other day. Okay? And the same thing. If you want to flip a little bit quicker, you don't want to scroll, you can go page to page with these arrows down here. Okay? All right, Iceman. Now, this tells us that there's some information on page 4 with an illustration on page 15. Okay, so now we know where we're going. We can go back to book pages and say, okay, we can start with page 4. And you can either click go, or if you just hit enter, that'll take you there too. Okay, and on page 4, we have a whole set of artifacts that were found with him or on his body when he was discovered in 1991. Okay, some nice images there. And then if we go to page 15, which was the one that said there was an illustration or a picture, he's down here, okay, with some text explaining just very briefly where and how he was found and kind of cluing us into why he was important. All right. Another important part that's included in the reference tab, something that would be really useful in the paper book, is the glossary. And just like the paper book has an English and a Spanish glossary, so does the book online. So let's go to the English glossary for a minute. Okay? And this would be good, for example, if you have the list of vocab terms that you need to look up, they're alphabetized here. Okay? So depending on how your vocab is done, how the list is set up, you might want to use a glossary, you might want to just flip through the chapter. But if you have the terms and you just want to get there in a hurry, you can scroll down, or again, we can flip page to page here. Because everything in the reference tab scrolls up and down instead of like the book pages that go sideways. Oh, and one other thing I want to mention about the glossary, proper names are not in here. In some of the book chapters, especially when we get more into the more modern history, you're going to have to explain who a person is, what he or she did, and why their actions are significant. Well, you can't really define a person, so individuals, proper names, are not in the glossary. For those, you're actually going to have to go to the chapter and try to figure out how to answer some of those who, what, and why questions on your own. All right, so the atlas, the table of contents, the index, and the glossary, all under that reference tab. All right, the next thing that can be really good if you use it, if you look up here, student resources. All right, a couple of things that I think are useful. Okay, if you go right here to chapters in brief, it's pretty much just like it sounds. Okay, and we were looking at some stuff in Chapter 1 with the Iceman, so it automatically kind of defaulted to Chapter 1 here. But this gives you summaries of the sections with some review questions, determining main ideas. That's an important skill that we're going to work on this year. Drawing comparisons. That's another skill we're going to work on. Summarizing. Okay? So these will walk you through the book. This is not supposed to be a substitute for reading the book. But if you read and you're having trouble kind of pulling together what's important about what you read, the chapters in brief can be really, really useful for that.
Probably very useful for test review, that kind of thing, rather than rereading the entire chapter.
Yep. The other thing that's really good, and let's see here. Over here, under reading support, guided reading workbook. Okay, can also be really useful. And this can help you, for example, if you have a reading quiz, which we're going to do this year, to see that you're reading for comprehension, that you're reading to remember things. And this is a little bit, maybe a little more basic than the chapters in brief in some ways, but it'll give you all the important vocab terms from that section, tell you what you're looking for, how you can maybe set up a diagram to help you focus when you're reading. And this kind of thing is great for those of you who are more visual learners. Okay? So, the student resources, the chapters in brief, and the guided reading worksheets can be really useful, and I hope that you'll check some of those things out, particularly if you normally have trouble remembering what you're reading. I don't want you to waste time, and if this will help you to not waste time, then please use it. That's what it's there for. All right. One of the other sections that I want to look at, just briefly, is over here in book pages. Now, like we already did when we started, we said, okay, if you wanted to go to that section on that we talked about in Chapter 1, you can just type the page number in up here where it says page and go right to it. Now, that's great if you have, for example, a homework assignment and you have to look at a particular page. But if you were, say, supposed to go to Chapter 2 and read the section on Egypt, well, you don't have a page number for that necessarily. If you go up here, like this says we're in Chapter 1, it gives you the name of the chapter. If we know we're in Chapter 2, and then we move over here to the right, this gives us all of the sections in Chapter 2. Okay, and there's the pyramids on the Nile with an extra section on work and play in ancient Egypt, which has some excellent pictures. Okay. So if we go here, okay, pyramids on the Nile, and again, set up just like a book. It's supposed to mimic the paper book. It's not like a website. Okay. Main ideas, terms and names, and this tells you what vocab terms are going to pop up in the section. Okay. And for the book pages, we got to go right and left. That didn't work the way I wanted to. Here it is. Okay, up here at the top. All right, and again, the colors are much brighter. Now, you'll notice, and this is page 36 if you want to pop over to this so you can do what I'm doing. There's a little box here, history, video. Okay? Now, this is pretty awesome because in conjunction with the History Channel, and I've got the volume turned down so that it's not going to overpower me, but there are little segments by historians, there are historical reenactments of battles, but whenever you see that little H with the little video icon, that'll give you a little more insight. And for those of you who are visual and auditory, that's great to kind of put those images in mind to help you remember some of the things that, again, are important. It's a little bit of extra reinforcement And you don't get that in the paper book. You know, you don't have the little pop-up video things available in the print copy. So that's something that they've added to the book online that's kind of cool. Something else I want to point out, okay, and we're on the same page here, page 36 in Egypt. Whenever you see one of your vocab words in blue, and this doesn't work with proper nouns because they're not in the glossary, but the regular terms, like dictionary terms, when you click on it, the definition pops right up. So if you had the vocab list already, you can use the glossary. If you know that you're supposed to define or explain all of the blue terms in the chapter, okay, read through the chapter. You see a blue word, click on it. If it's a dictionary term, it's right there.
I was going to say, if you're actually doing the reading like you're supposed to, and you come across a word that you don't understand, if it's blue, just click it.
Click it. It's not going to work with people's names because, again, you can't define a person. But if you read the subsection, okay, we have the subsetting here, or the subheading here, for example. If you read the little subsection, you can get an idea of who they were and what they did. All right. I think that I've hit a lot of the high points here. There's a lot of good information. There's a lot of good information in this book, and there are other things we could do with it, but I just wanted to get you started to kind of demystify the process a little bit. And in terms of what I do with the book and what I saw people use last year, the first time we had this available, those are the things that are most useful. Again, use the blue tabs up at the top. Book pages, you can go to any one of the chapters right here. Okay, this is kind of a table of contents in brief. Okay, and all of the sections of that chapter are listed over here on the right. Okay, that'll take you right there. If you know the page number where, for example, a homework assignment is listed, you can type it right here. Okay, go straight to the page, just like we did when we were looking at the artifacts that were found on the Neolithic Iceman. Okay. For e-activities, that really kind of depends on what's in the chapter. But again, here's some of those interactive maps that I mentioned to you in class. The interactive map is going to show you extra information. It's a lot more useful than just looking at the flat map in the book. And some of these actually don't appear in the paper copy of the book. So again, this is extra stuff. Different chapters have different things. Internet activities, crossword puzzles, things to help you with notes. Ooh, vocab flip cards. These are pretty awesome because what it gives you is a simulated note card, and it will flip it over for you to help you practice the terms.
So basically, you get flashcards even if your parents are too busy to do flashcards with you.
And as I mentioned in class, flashcards are good, especially for those of you who are haptic learners. You got to do stuff with your hands.
Well, I mean, it's one of the oldest ways, since people have had ready access to paper. It's one of the oldest ways of memorizing lists of things. Mm-hmm. I mean, for the reason that it works.
And this is also a way, if you want kind of a quick check on your vocab, to go through those. So those are also there under some of the e-activities.
I did not know those were in this book.
Yeah, there's some stuff.
There are some useful things here.
The audio again.
I love the audio.
Yeah, if you want to listen to anything as MP3s. The references, table of contents, index, atlas maps. Everything that would be in the paper copy because it's an online book. It's not a web page.
This is so much cooler than what we had when I was in school.
I know. There's a lot of neat stuff here. And for student resources, again, different chapters have different things. But the chapters in brief for a nice refresher overview. And then, again, all the worksheets that you would find in a regular old book, they're all in there. Okay? So if you want extra help reviewing, if reading the book and looking over your notes is not good enough, it's probably not good enough. There's a lot of other things you can do. You don't have to get this stuff from me.
I really like that chapters in brief thing too.
Yeah.
That's a really good idea.
Yeah.
I mean, even way back when I was teaching, they didn't have those even as handouts. This is a. That's right, kids. Things have improved enormously. You have no more excuses.
All right. So anyhow, I hope that you'll play with this. I hope that you'll use it. It's really got some neat things that are above and beyond what you'll get from your plain old paper blah 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 textbook.
These are really great resources.
Yeah. So I hope that you'll use it. If you have any problems getting started, please come talk to me, and I'll be happy to walk you through this myself. That's your online book.